Last week we looked at graphs of how our world is changing. The graphs that we looked at showed quantities that may have been increasing or decreasing or a mix. In this toolkit, we'll be looking at linear models where we have a perfectly predictable steady decrease or increase. The population of a Midwestern city was 350,000 in 1990, and it has been decreasing at a constant rate of 15,000 people every year. So that's a very steady drop in population every single year. We're going to determine a model, and that's sort of a vague word, but that could refer to this table, it could refer to this graph, and then we're even going to write an equation to represent all the same story. So this is the verbal description, and then we have a numerical and a graphical and an algebraic representation of that same model. To create the table for this model, we're going to write 0, 1, 2, 3 all the way up to 8 years, just because that's how much we have room for. And then we're going to show that the population starts at 350,000. And just to save space, we are saying in thousands so that we don't have to write the 3 extra zeros every time. So what will the next year's population be? Well, we lose 15,000 people every year. So 350,000 minus 15,000 I'm using this calculator called the Desmos Scientific Calculator. And if you want to find it, you can just type in Desmos Scientific, and that's the first calculator. It's not the graphing calculator, it's a simpler one, a scientific calculator. So I recommend this one. We get 335,000, so that would be the next answer here, 335. And as a shortcut, I'm going to show you this. If you just do 350, and then you say answer minus 15, we don't have to write the extra zeros, so we'll just write 335 for year 1. And then the cool thing about saying answer minus 15 is that we can then hit enter, 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 and it will keep repeating and taking the previous answer minus 15, previous answer minus 15. So our answers are 335, 320, 305, and you can just keep going. And this even works on manual calculators, which I can't really show you on this screen, but if you type in 350, enter, minus 15, enter, then you can just keep hitting enter, and it will just keep spitting out the next number as it shows that constant drop. So the values in the table should look like this. We just subtract 15,000 every year. And at the end of 8 years, we will be down to 230,000 people in that city. Now, it doesn't seem that realistic for this to happen in the world. We could have cities that are growing or cities where the population is decreasing, and it's probably not going to be exactly 15,000 every year. But linear models are useful, and we'll be looking at other examples where they might be more realistic. And sometimes you have to have something perfect theoretically, and real life is always messier than the theoretical model. Okay, so to create the graph of this data, let's just look at the grid provided here. I don't know why I went all the way up to 14 years, but maybe we will need to project into the future. So we're only going up to 8 years here, and those years are years since 1990. So this is really 91, 92, 93. Looks like it's ancient history for some of you. And then for the population, I have the bold lines in hundreds of thousands, and then the minor grid lines are every 20,000. So that would be 320, 340, 360, 380, and then it gets to 400. So I realized after I started working on this that it made it a little bit tricky to graph. So let's take a look. I want to plot 0, 350,000. So the point that I'm looking at right here is year 0. We have 350,000, so I had to put it halfway between 340 and 360. And to make my life easier, I just numbered those intermediate numbers in there. And you might have wished that I went by tens, but then it would have been kind of crowded. So maybe this was an okay choice to have the grid lines at every 20,000. So I start at 350, and then at year 1, the population went down to 335. So there I am, I'm like, well, that's a little bit below 340. So I didn't put it in the middle, I put it a little bit closer to the 340 than the 320. And then at year 2, we're at 320, so I put it exactly on that minor grid line. And you get the idea, you just keep estimating the location of the point. And at some point, I got a little tired of this process, and I decided to skip to the end, and I said, okay, 8 to 30. So if you go to year 8, and I locate 230, I drew that point, and then I just got my ruler, and I sketched in the whole line. So that's the first city, the Midwestern city, and it has a declining steadily population.